a story for another time.
Yeah, we got a month left in the season. But on to the NFL free agency.
True.
Shefty's Twitter fingers are hurting.
Yes. Shefty, Ian Rappaport, Ari Mirov, all the good insiders, Tom Pelissero. They have been working double time the past couple days with just a few of those guys that you saw in that graphic there. If you're watching on YouTube, guys like Kirk Cousins, Christian Wilkins, Josh Jacobs right there that we saw. Three of the biggest free agents we had this year who already found new homes. We're not going to talk about every single transaction because that would take 2 hours, and we're not going to sit here and do that. But, there are some things we have to point out. Obviously, we talked about Kirk Cousins. He's joining the NFC South of our New Orleans Saints, who have made one total move in free agency so far. Made that today about an hour before we started recording. Linebacker out of the Kansas City Chiefs, Willie Gay, is now a New Orleans Saint. 1 year, $5 million guaranteed.
He's 26. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think he's a great player. Super young. He's coming off an injury last season where he didn't play very much, but he should be healthy this year and ready to go. He seemed excited about coming down. Former teammates and Tyrann Mathieu and Colin Saunders are already down here. So this is going to be our third Kansas City Chief championship pedigree player on this defense, and I think that's really important. Even though he's still young, he knows what it's like to taste winning, and I think that's important for a Saints team who not a lot of the players know what that feels like. So I'm excited about it. I know it's a smaller signing. A lot of people may not know about it or hear about it or even care if you're not a Saints fan, but I think for us it's a big move, adding some young athleticism to a defense where DeMario's kind of on his last 2 years here. Pete Werner has been in and out of the lineup based on injury. We lose Zach Bond to the Eagles. And I think he's a much better player than Zach Bond. As much as I love Zach Bond, Willie Gay can stop the run. He can cover in passes, and he is a great free rusher when they run a blitz. We saw that a lot in Kansas City. Spagnuolo loves to run third down blitzes, and Willie Gay was always the guy who he chose to do it when he was healthy. And I think that's something that Dennis Allen can dial up as a defensive-minded head coach.
Yeah, you haven't had that true third linebacker since – I guess Quan Alexander was here, but before him there wasn't really a guy either. Yes, Caden Ellis had a great year 2 years ago, got a bag to go to the Falcons, but last year, I couldn't tell you who the rotation linebacker was.
It was Zach Bond.
Exactly, and we saw him rush the passer a couple times, which looked great, but in coverage, he's just a little too small. Willie Gay's got some real NFL size, and I think he's a great pass coverage linebacker, like you were saying, and he can get his nose dirty when he needs to, especially with, we can talk about an aging DeMario Davis all we want. He's still going to play all 18 games.
Yep.
It's not going to matter. And Pete Werner having a couple injury issues, but Willie Gay is probably one of the best signings the Saints have had in a little while just because of the team need. And that's not even a first thought of we need a third linebacker.
Right. But then you have it and you're like, yes, this is what we were missing. I'm not going to say he's going to come in and be like some 120 tackle, 4 picks, 5 sacks kind of guy. That's not what we expect him to be.
But he's 26. He has the potential to be a Mike linebacker in the NFL. I think that I know he's on a 1-year deal, but let's say it's a prove-it deal, comes in, plays well, you sign him a little bit longer term, DeMario Davis ends up retiring. I'm happy with Willie Gay being our starting linebacker.
Yeah, I think he's going to be great. He's going to be a great will side linebacker. When we're not playing nickel defense and we have all 3 linebackers out there, he's going to be on the field. I think that's kind of what we resorted to last year is because we didn't have that linebacker depth. We played a lot of nickel. And, kind of having the personnel to be able to get out of that sometimes if we're on a second and short and we know they're going to be running the ball, throw them in there, let them stop up the A or the B gap and see what we can do. I think it's going to be really exciting to have a, young athletic player on our defense, on a defense that was already pretty darn good. But let's each do a couple takeaways from free agency beyond the Saints and just say what we see around the NFL. Maybe some underrated moves, maybe some teams making big overhauls. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down 3 guys to talk about today, and I mean, there's one that's like a massive move that probably nobody's talking about, and then I've got one of my favorite guys going to a team that nobody's talking about, and then the Jets just getting beefier on defense. So Jordan Brooks, the Miami Dolphins, 3 years, $30 million. In my opinion, Jordan Brooks statistically is one of the top 3 interior linebackers in the league.
He's very good and still very young.
Nobody's talking about him being a Pro Bowl or anything like that, but he's got a nose for the football, averages like 7 tackles a game. Miami hasn't had an elite linebacker in a hot little minute, and with a lot of names departing from that Miami defense, to get a guy like Jordan Brooks to come in and shape up that defense however you need it to be, because he's great in pass coverage, he's great stopping the run, kind of a do-it-all linebacker. I'm excited to see that happen.
Yeah, they lose Jerome Baker and then bring in Jordan Brooks. Jordan Brooks is a better player than Jerome Baker was, and he was a great player coming from Tennessee into Miami. So I think Jordan Brooks is a very underrated move. I think Seattle's going to miss him a lot more than they think, because he is a very good player, was a first-round pick, started off slow, and now he's kind of found his stride in the NFL. So I think that's a really good underrated signing.
Yeah, and they paired him up with Anthony Walker from Cleveland, which honestly, you've got 2 athletic freaks playing linebacker for you. That's hard to be upset with.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of the Miami Dolphins, is how athletic can we be?
You got a guy?
Yeah. Well, I don't have any individual guys. You went with individuals. I went with more overarching themes. My overarching theme to start us off is the running back market. I know that's broad, but like it went crazy.
Yeah, like more than half the league has a new running back.
Yeah. So just listing off some names that changed teams, and then we'll talk about their situation. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, Devin Singletary, Gus Edwards, Antonio Gibson, and Aaron Jones. All of those guys are on new teams. So Saquon goes from the Giants to the Eagles on a 3-year, $37 million deal. Giants didn't even offer him a contract, and then paid $7 million left to get a right guard who's aging. Makes no sense to me, but Saquon joins a team where he's in a much better situation, where he's finally in a situation where it feels like he can make a run not only in the playoffs but at being a Super Bowl contender, and it'll be the first time in Saquon's career where he really gets to be a winner with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and a reshaped but still very good offensive line.
Yeah, I'm excited about Saquon in Philly because Saquon's put up some crazy numbers in the past, but he's never had a great offensive line. And so, like, we've seen DeAndre Swift be a top 5 fantasy running back. What does Saquon do behind a great offensive line, at least for fantasy?
Yeah, they do lose Jason Kelsey, and, Lane Johnson's getting older, but Jordan Mailata is still one of the best tackles in the league. Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson have absolutely locked it down inside, and, they'll probably draft a guy to work interior as well. Cam Jurgens can move to center.
I want to say they've taken a tackle recently, too, and so maybe he can slide to guard and Jurgens to center.
Yeah, there's a lot of room not only for improvement but also for stability on that line. So I'm excited to see what Saquon could do, especially in a system that utilizes the running back so heavily. I think Jalen Hurts will finally have a receiving back out of the backfield that isn't Kenneth Gainwell, which is always a plus. Josh Jacobs forces Aaron Jones out of the city by signing with Green Bay. He got $12 million a year. I think it's a big question mark for me.
I think it's a plus for Josh, whereas it's a massive question mark from Green Bay.
Yeah, Josh got $12 million a year from a solid franchise who was in the playoffs last year.
They've decent running game too,
and they had a two-headed monster of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon kind of not so great anymore. Aaron Jones was looking great. They're kind of going with a different type of running back, though. Josh Jacobs is more of a power in between the tackles guy, whereas Aaron Jones was more based on that elusivity and catching the ball out of the backfield. So it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to the Jordan Love game, I think. So that's kind of why it's a question mark from the Packers for me. But good for Josh Jacobs. Got his money, got out of Vegas, where he's been having year after year of contract talks that never lead to anything. I think he's a really darn good player, and I'm interested to see how he fits in that team. Derrick Henry finally leaves Tennessee and goes to a team that everybody expected him to go to in Baltimore. He is now a Baltimore Raven, teaming up with Lamar Jackson. I don't think it's a big surprise necessarily. A lot of people expected him to go to Baltimore. He looks good in a Ravens jersey from what we've seen in the Photoshops. And I think that'll bring something that Baltimore's never had, where it's a guy who can be consistent out of the backfield. They've gone through J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and Keaton Mitchell is a really good young rookie from last year, but unfortunately he got hurt. So we haven't seen a solidified running back in Baltimore in what feels like a decade since Ray Rice left. And now we have Derrick Henry there.
The Ravens, as of late, have felt like a running back by committee team, but they've never started the year saying we're a running back by committee team. They've just gotten injured, and the next person's injured. And so that's why they feel like a running back by committee team. And Lord knows Derrick Henry will fight tooth and nail before he gets hurt.
Yeah. And then, you have some shuffling in other places as well, where guys just fill in other people's spots. Tony Pollard fills in for Derrick Henry going to Tennessee. Antonio Gibson goes to New England, and then Austin Eckler comes and takes his role in Washington on a very cheap deal for Austin Eckler, only about $5.5 million a year. DeAndre Swift goes to be the committee leader in Chicago, making $8 million a year, which I think that's an interesting move for sure. I think he probably got the most money he was going to get anywhere from Chicago, but they already had a running back room with Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, and Dante Foreman that I think could have used some more player development rather than new players. Devin Singletary goes to the Giants after leaving the Texans on his best season, but I'll save that until you give me your next guy.
Yeah, just to put a little touch on what you just said, the strangest thing to me is we haven't seen the Cowboys or Chargers.
Chargers did get Gus Edwards.
Oh, they got Gus Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't process for me.
Yeah, it's fine. The Raiders are the other team that haven't
replaced.
Right, it's the Cowboys and the Raiders.
But evidently, we were talking about this a second ago. The Cowboys are just yet to make a move.
Yep,
which is
one of four teams. One of four teams to not sign a free agent in this cycle. But go ahead and give me your second guy.
Yeah, my second guy, of course, another linebacker, which I don't know why I've become the linebacker guy of late. But Frankie Louvu, guy that I love, played at Carolina the past couple of years, was elite against the Saints at least. He's going to be a Commander, 3 years, $36 million. I've come to figure out, I guess, come to state that maybe if the Commanders use their second pick in a certain direction, I might be all in on the Commanders.
You have said so. You have said so multiple times over the past couple days with
their quarterback of their defense and then their quarterback of their offense. Could be both of my guys.
Yeah, they've signed 2 interior linemen. They've signed a linebacker. They've signed Austin Eckler. They've definitely made some really good moves for that team that we thought was going down the drain when they traded their 2 best players at the trade deadline last season. So if they get a certain quarterback out of LSU, you may be buying a Commander's jersey.
Yeah, I may be all in.
You and Clown Car both will be
he's already all in.
He's already all in. He has been for a long time. But Frankie Louvu, very good player. Kind of reminds me of Jordan Brooks in the way that he's an underrated middle linebacker who doesn't get much love, but you're never going to watch him and be like, man, he needs to get better.
Oh, yeah.
You'll never think that he needs to get better. He always is making plays. Good for 8 to 9 tackles a game. Can play a little bit of pass coverage. And kind of like I said with Willie Gay, is really good as a free rusher as well when you let him spy the quarterback and let him do what he does.
Yeah.
My second point, the Houston Texans. That's why I'm wearing my jersey. I think the Houston Texans have won free agency so far, if you ask me. They have made not only a large number of signings as far as quantity goes, but their quality has been out the wazoo as well.
The wazoo.
Yeah. They get Lonnie Johnson, who played big special teams and nickel minutes for the Saints last season. I think he's just another addition to a young DB room that's going to add some veteran presence and get you some special teams play. They added Jeff Okudah on a 1 year, $4.5 million deal. That's very low for Jeff Okudah because not only did he struggle early on in his career, but he hasn't been healthy at all. He's played, he left Detroit because he wasn't healthy, played in Atlanta last season, couldn't stay healthy there. So this is his kind of 1 year prove it deal. If you can stay healthy, him next to Derek Stingley is going to be a great combo if we see young Jeff Okudah back on the Houston Texans. He's very explosive, and he prevents explosivity from wide receivers on the other side, although he may, allow 8 to 10 yard plays here and there. I don't think I've ever seen Jeff Okudah give up some huge play, and I think that's really big for a young team to not allow those things to get ahead of them. They bring back Noah Brown, wide receiver who we saw take big steps last season when Nico Collins and Tank Dell both went down. He was getting over 100 yards a game 2 weeks in a row. So I think that's big for C.J. Stroud, the guy who I'm repping, to have some consistency for the first time in his life. Although he played at Ohio State for 3 years, he was always switching quarterback and OCs. He comes in as a rookie last year and has one of the best rookie receivers of all time. One of the best rookie seasons of all time, excuse me. And now he gets to maintain not only his head coach and his OC who decided to stay home and Bobby Slowick, but he also maintains Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Noah Brown in the receiver room. In the backfield, though, they add Joe Mixon through a trade, which I think is huge. Although Devin Singletary had 900 rushing yards last season and they still have Dameon Pierce, Joe Mixon's way better than either of those guys, if we're being honest. Although he's getting older and Cincinnati was kind of, on the fence about having him anymore, he's still a very darn good running back in a league of you either are a star or you're middle of the pack. There's no really in between. Joe Mixon's a very good player, and I think he's going to add a lot to that offense, being able to run on the ground and bring a veteran presence to a very young squad. And then looking at the defense, they brought in Azeez Al-Shaair, former Tennessee Titan as well as former San Francisco 49er, who I thought that was a huge move because he's a really darn good player, and he's connected with D'Amico Ryans in the past. When D'Amico was in San Fran, that's when Shaair was in San Fran, and we saw him as one of those big linebacker rotations between him, Dre Greenlaw, and Fred Warner. That was one of the best defensive we've seen in a long time, and he was a big part of that. So I think it's a good move for them on defense because that kind of was their fall down last year, was their defense couldn't contain not only a quarterback run from Lamar Jackson, but that over the middle stuff. So bringing in Azeez Al-Shaair as well as two pass rushers and Danico Autry, who's an interior guy, bigger guy who can stop the run but is really known for getting to the pass from the middle of the defense. And then arguably one of the biggest signings of all of free agency, replacing Jonathan Grenard with Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter has been one of the most impressive, consistent edge rushers in the NFL since he's been drafted out of LSU. He's never had a season under 10 sacks, and last year he led the league in sacks until he got overtaken in the last couple weeks. I think he had something like 15 and a half. Just had a fantastic year, and he got paid for it. He got $25 million a year. Danielle Hunter is a darn good player, and he is going to add a lot to this Texans team. I mean, looking at what they're going to have, C.J. Stroud, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and then on the defense, having Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry, Derek Stingley, Azeez Al-Shaair, Jalen Petre. This team's going to be really good. And I'm not only saying that because I'm wearing a C.J. Stroud jersey. I'm saying that because they were already 10-7 last year with 3 games that could have went the other way. And adding all of these pieces and making these moves, I think those 3 games do go the other way. You could see the Houston Texans being a 2 seed this year.
Yeah, I mean, the Texans' moves seem to be that both the GM and the owner agree that you've got lightning in a bottle right now with Stroud and these young receivers and this amazing young defense, in my opinion. And so they've collectively agreed, how do we get this young team better? And that's bringing in some veteran presence that are maybe towards the end of their height. Like towards the end of their peak.
Right.
But they're also good enough to make the next guy better.
They're getting guys who are either at their peak or just off of their peak, to where they bring in not only the veteran presence, but they're important on the field, to where now they have like 2 to 3 years to really lock this thing up.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like the Bengals from a few years ago.
This is the most correct way to go all in.
I mean, yeah. And, even speaking about the Bengals, when's the last time we've seen a team go from a top 3 to 5 pick for 4 years straight to now being almost a favorite to make it to their conference championship? I mean, they are top 10 in Super Bowl odds right now after being a consistently horrible football team. And it's all on the backs of a second-year head coach, a second-year quarterback, and a huge free agency class that I am very excited to see.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about the Bengals, but I feel like they didn't go all in until the year after they made the Super Bowl.
And then they didn't make it back.
Yeah.
So this
you're here trying to go all in early because you've got this crazy potential in your quarterback and crazy potential with these young DBs. And so the Texans definitely did it right.
Yeah, I think
sometimes you look and you're like, hey, y'all quarterback's a little young for you to go all in right now. The Texans have realized where they are, where they're standing, and are saying, hey, the time is now. We've made I'm pretty sure it might even be their first playoff berth in this decade or something like that.
It was, yeah, I mean, it was the first time since Deshaun Watson was their quarterback and healthy.
Yeah.
Was their quarterback. That they had made, a run at the playoffs. I think they had made the AFC Championship one time. Maybe not. Maybe they just made the divisional round. But you're right. They did it the right way. They have a rookie quarterback. They have the rookie of the year on both sides of the ball right now, Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud. They bring in a veteran running back who's towards the twilight of his career but still a very good player, a really young and exciting head coach, and a GM and owner who's not afraid to take chances on guys. And they're doing it the right way. They have picks to fill out the rest of their team. The Texans are a team that you have to keep an eye on in the next couple years at maybe being that young team that figures out how to win the game. Because, sometimes you have these young teams that they just don't know how to win, and they have all this potential in the world, and they don't figure it out. I think the Texans are a team that can do it, and I'm really excited to see what they do next season. Give us your third and final point from free agency.
Yeah. Defensive tackle, Javon Kinlaw to the Jets. It's a 1-year deal. Nobody's announced any money yet. But that's been the biggest question mark on this Jets defense is who's playing next to Quinnen Williams. And if you get a monster like Javon Kinlaw, it doesn't matter how long you have him in a Jets uniform, that is terrifying for any interior offensive lineman.
Yeah, he's one of those picks who never turned out to what you thought he would be, but he's still a darn good player. And we don't know what his potential is yet because he was on the 49ers, where he got overshadowed by Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, who went to the Colts, and then Javon Kinlaw was in, but then they brought in Javon Hargrave.
Yeah.
So the 49ers have always been stacked on the defensive line. Javon Kinlaw gets out of that room and has his chance to shine right next to Quinnen Williams.
Yeah, and another thing with this signing, it's more than just solidifying the defense. You've solidified the defense so well with this signing that in the draft, all the Jets have to worry about is offense.
I would argue that they have to pay attention to the edge as well. They would need Will McDonald to step up in a big way because of losing Bryce Huff. But that leads me into my third and final.
The edge rusher class.
My third and final takeaway from NFL free agency, which is edge rushers getting paid. Like I said, Bryce Huff goes to the Eagles. Jonathan Grenard talked about him a little bit with the Texans. He goes to Minnesota as well as Andrew Van Ginkel. Josh Allen got $24 million franchise tag put on him by Jacksonville. Brian Burns gets traded from the Carolina Panthers to the New York Giants for a second and a fifth, and then gets like $95 million. And then your Commanders bring in Dorrance Armstrong, underrated player, I believe. I think he can make some real strides in filling in the role that Chase Young left. And then Leonard Floyd adds to the depth that we talk about in San Francisco. Zadarius Smith stays in Cleveland. That's just a few names. And all of those guys that I just named, I think it's like 10 guys, none of them got under $10 million a year. All of them are $10 million plus per year.
I thought Za'Darius was making 8.
Za'Darius got a 2-year, $21.5 million deal.
Jesus Christ.
So, yes, very good man. So, yeah, I mean, the Brian Burns trade was crazy. The Panthers, I saw a breakdown the other day where they ended up trading DJ Moore, the rights to Caleb Williams, 3 first-round picks, a second, and a fifth or something. And Christian McCaffrey. And in return, they have gotten the equivalent of Bryce Young, DJ Johnson, who was the 125th out of 136 edge rushers, and a fifth-round pick. So, you know, the Panthers are one of the most poorly run franchises we've seen, and it kind of backs it up when Brian Burns goes to the New York Giants, which that defense will be interesting to watch. But, yeah, that my third and final takeaway from free agency is the fact that the NFL is seeing the importance of edge rushers and getting to the passer. One of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, Move the Sticks, with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. They talk about the 3 Ps, which is playmakers, or the 4 Ps, excuse me, playmakers, passers, pass protectors, and pass rushers. And I think that's the 4 things we're seeing right now in NFL free agency is the passers are going places with Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins changing teams. Pass protectors, we're seeing O-linemen get a ton of money. Edge rushers getting a ton of money from the pass rushers. And then playmakers with, running backs moving around. And this is a very big wide receiver class coming up in the draft. So, NFL free agency has been all over the place. Insiders have been working overtime to keep us up to date on what's going on. And it's still not done yet because they still got some big names on the board that we'll see move in the next few days. Looking forward from Off the Dome, I think we're going to start putting out some mock drafts because it is getting into draft season. We're a little bit less than a month away from the NFL draft, and we're hearing more rumors here and there about who may go where and what teams may be looking to trade up or trade back. And free agency has given us a little bit of a clearer picture on what teams may be looking for in this upcoming draft. So maybe we'll start putting out some mock draft and opinion videos on certain prospects. I think it'll be fun to kind of break from the mold of doing the podcast and do, the shorter videos that we've done in the past with, free agency, playoff predictions and LSU baseball preview and stuff like that. So that's what you can look for. You can listen to that on Spotify, Off the Dome Sports Podcast. You can look us up on YouTube, Off the Dome Sports Podcast. Subscriber count is growing. Followers on the X/Twitter is growing as well. And our network at Be in the Know is always growing as well. So we've got good people behind us. We've got good people on the microphones. I'm really excited about the future with the content coming out of the OTD studio. ReBo Hustle. Anything to say to the people?
People be people.
That might be the smartest thing he said all day. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Off the Dome Sports Podcast. I am Redfish.
I'm ReBo Hustle.
And we will see you next time.